yourself, king. Be yourself. Be yourself, queen. Be yourself. Be yourself, king. Be yourself. Be yourself, queen. Be yourself.
What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Santi Dean, tuning back in.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Dr. Corbin Smith.
Welcome to the YMC Me podcast. This is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people. Today, we are interviewing Sophia Jackson. She currently works as a Chief Strategy Officer at
the North Carolina Partnership for Children.
And she's also a candidate for NC House District 37. Shout out to District 37.
Definitely big shout out to District 37. And if you would like to know more information about Sophia and her campaign, log on to her website, teamjacksonfornc.com. All right, so we have a wonderful interview featuring Miss Sophia Jackson. Take some time, unwind, and enjoy the interview.
So I'm going to start off with the first question, and that is, can you tell us about your background and what inspired you to get involved in youth and young adult mentoring?
Mm-hmm. So my background is one that is non-traditional from a professional perspective. But let me start with personal. I was born and raised in Chicago, grew up in a rather stable environment. My parents have been married for 46 years. And my academic journey was pretty typical. I went to a neighborhood school in Chicago, which for me happened to be a Scholastic Academy, which was wonderful. I had great teachers there, matriculated to Whitney Young, which is one of the best high schools in Illinois, and the former high school of our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, is an alum of Whitney Young. So I always like saying that. So my background, and I went to church every Sunday. So my community of early relationships were pretty solid in terms of having lived in the same neighborhood for 18 years, went to my neighborhood elementary school, and have long-term relationships with both the adults that led my life at that time as well as my friends. So professionally, I went into corporate America right away. My focus, my mother had modeled for me working 30 years at the Federal Reserve Bank, and my dad for eventually 46 years at a small business in Chicago. I just thought I wanted to be in corporate America and be downtown in the big buildings, typing and doing things all administrative. And that was good. As Future Business Leaders of America vice president in high school, I went on to Florida A&M University, and it was all good until it was time for me to graduate and sign on for my first job with Ford Motor Company. At that point, I was like, wait, something is missing. And I went on a journey of meditation, of self-discovery, a lot of reading and research, and I came upon the science of the early years from the neuroscience in a book called Neurons to Neighborhood. And I could go into much more detail, but essentially, Corbin, my journey into youth advocacy, specifically early childhood experiences and positive early childhood experiences, is rooted in my intentional quest to make a career change from corporate America to a more purpose-driven career. And for me, all of the issues that we would ever want to affect or improve with young children start in the first 5 years. So it started, quite honestly, on a just a quest to think about my life's purpose intentionally and the role that my career would have in the world.
Okay, thank you for that answer. My second question is, what are your organization's primary objectives and how do you measure success?
Yes. So I am proud to be the Chief Strategy Officer for a network of organizations. All 76 of us work across the state of North Carolina to help each county in our state prioritize the youngest children. So I work for a state office. We contract money, provide additional resources and training and coaching and thought partnership to 75 county-based organizations. So the county-based organizations, along with the state, office where I work, we receive money from the General Assembly, and we've been established for 30 years. Our primary outcomes are singular in the sense that we all want to make sure that children under 5 in North Carolina have what they need. There are about 600,000 children under 5 in North Carolina, and every day we try to stretch our money to support those children, their parents, their teachers, their pediatricians, their mentors, any people, any adult that is supporting a child from infancy through kindergarten. Our outcomes are fivefold, though. We are specifically interested in children's healthy birth outcomes. So child and family health is one outcome area. We are interested in parents being able to have the best support to be parents, their primary role and number one teacher. So we have a host of home visiting and parenting education courses, but family support and leadership is a second outcome. We're also very much concerned about literacy as a very specific outcome, as it determines so much. We are interested in overall access and quality of early childhood education. And then we are interested in a number of systems change efforts, specifically around reducing adverse childhood experiences and increasing positive childhood experiences. So for those listening, I'll say those 5 outcomes can simply be said. We measure our success and are interested in outcomes from the hospital to the home, to the school, to the community. And all of our organizations operate on those different levels. Now, how we move those outcomes forward, how we move toward those very nurturing environments for children is via a catalog of what we call SMART solutions. So our learning and evaluation department at North Carolina Partnership for Children is responsible for identifying which evidence-based, evidence-informed solutions are out there and have proven to make a difference. So we curate and we look through the research and to see where evidence has existed before, and we make those solutions available for our 75 nonprofits across the state. They work with their boards and their local leaders in order to select which outcomes they want to put in contract. And then, of course, we're collecting data on the back end. So measuring success includes ensuring that those nonprofits are healthy. We have collected data and information about like how strong are they as a nonprofit. So that's operational and procedural. How strong are they being a nonprofit operating specifically in the Smart Start world? And then how effective are they at being systems change leaders and adaptive leaders within their communities? So we capture data on not only how those solutions work for children and families, but also how the organization works as an entity of itself and as a member of our network.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer as well. So I'm going to move forward into the conversation and touch a bit on a topic, racial justice. And I wanted to ask you, because you are a subject matter expert on the topic, how can mentoring organizations ensure their programs are culturally sensitive and responsive to the diverse needs of the youth they serve?
First, by recognizing that the mentors themselves and the organizations that they represent do not have all the answers. There are best practices and guardrails and evidence-based practices that show to produce outcomes, but entering into a mentor relationship with a sense of curiosity that answers exist outside of oneself, I think is the number one way. Because what that does is it creates a partnership and it welcomes the mentee to show up in ways that is really co-creating the relationship. you mentioned racial justice and how mentoring can be culturally relevant. Being culturally relevant absolutely is one way to achieve racial justice. I also think that mentoring helps to create a pathway that fills gaps created by racial injustice. And by recognizing that mentoring fills the gaps caused by racial injustice, and knowing that that racial injustice is not a monolith and that it must, everyone's experienced that injustice differently, I think approaching the practice from that mindset creates an openness that leverages the power of mentorship.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So continuing to move forward in the conversation, I wanted to discuss matters around LGBTQ plus and gender identity. So I wanted to ask you, how does one create a safe and inclusive environment for LGBTQ plus youth within their programs?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just going to restate something very briefly here. My answer to creating an inclusive environment for anyone, be it race, gender, identity, various levels of ability, is to really, especially when you're working with young folks who kind of know what they want, they know who they are, or at least they know who they are at that stage in life, is by inviting them to co-create the relationship and the environment of mentoring. Some of the ways that we know that we can immediately, or I wouldn't say immediately, but one way that we can proactively, that's the word, proactively create an environment inclusive for LGBTQ plus, is by using pronouns, is by watching for gendered language, for gendered assumptions. And a lot of this has to do with the mentor's reflection on themselves. And, I think the gendered assumptions is such a tricky place to be, because there's so many, for example, that assumes a teenage girl wants to be a mom. And in mentoring, mentors can watch out by not assuming that that is the role or desire for that person because they happen to present as a woman. So I think there are a number of other things that can be done to proactively create that environment. And we can always enter these relationships as mutually beneficial and mutually creating.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you saw me wave my hand, a fly came out of nowhere. So I was waving off what you were saying. I definitely 100% agree with you. I do have another question rooted in the identity realm. What advice do you give mentors working with young people exploring their gender identity?
There is a danger in the single story. There is no single story. And if we find ourselves operating in a level of certainty that it must be a certain way, I think that is the number one sign of caution. And I guess my second advice my first advice is to operate in that space, that there is a danger of the single story. My second piece of advice is to be curious. Humanity exists on a spectrum, and we have to be curious and create space for people to express themselves on a spectrum. And recognizing a spectrum is directly opposed to a single story. That because I present one way, I must be some way or desire a certain thing. So curiosity is just always the best practice when adults are working with young children.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So with racial injustices and the LGBTQ plus and gender identity realm, youth can enter this space of social homelessness where, because of the injustices that are and the disparities that are happening, that they feel socially that they don't have a place, and that creates social homelessness. So my next few questions are rooted around that. And the first one is, how does social homelessness affect young people, and what role can mentoring play in addressing this issue?
Well, the number one way to create a strong foundation for young children is to ensure positive early relationships. The whole science of the early years is about creating early, nurturing relationships. And if a child finds coming out of, growing out, aging out of early childhood and entering into middle school, or becoming older youth and feeling socially homeless and isolated, that can have deleterious effects for life. And just as educators and mentors can provide those early relationships for children, it is the exact same thing for mentoring. We are social beings. And the pandemic taught us what the impact of loneliness and isolation could be. And so I'm thankful to mentors and early childhood educators and educators broadly, be them informally outside of the schoolhouse or formally inside the schoolhouse. When adults provide nurturing early relationships for children, they can transform a lifetime. That's just how powerful it can be.
Thank you. Another question rooted in social homelessness is, does your organization engage in any advocacy efforts to address this systematic issue that contributes to the challenges faced by youth?
Well, I say yes. For us, youth is defined as the youngest youth, our youngest neighbors. And that is from infancy, toddlerhood, through age 5. And our whole existence is about making sure that those very young youth have access to quality nurturing relationships, either in the home, in the school, or in their community. So we do engage in advocacy for additional funding for our organization because we are such a comprehensive solution. We also engage in advocacy for other forms of early care and education. And as I mentioned before, every bit of the science and the art of early childhood experiences is about relationships and making sure that we can get as many positive relationships for children as possible.
Thank you. Okay. Now, here on YMC and Me, the podcast, we have a segment that we call Reveal Your Heal, which is focused and centered in mental health. So the next two questions are our Reveal Your Heal segment, and I wanted to ask you, what are some effective strategies for mentoring young people who are struggling with anxiety or depression?
Breathing. Deep, supported breathing. I completed a marathon 20 years ago, and I discovered the power of breath, being able to control the breath, as a way of achieving such a feat. About 5 years ago, I completed a 10-day silent meditation retreat, and I left feeling like I have everything I need to survive. My own personal experience, the science and art of healing, often called meditation or even yoga or even sports that require folks to control their breath. I think that is the number one strategy that mentors can teach young folks. And for very young children, we have taught it by putting a red cup on top of their belly and asking them to breathe so deeply that it rises and falls. I think it's the number one strategy because you don't need any resources and you can do it from anywhere and nobody has to know that you're doing it. And if we allow and engage students, youth, in identifying the sensations in their body that shows that that is a manifestation of anxiety and how breath can correct that, I think that it is powerful. And quite honestly, infants breathe this way. It's only as we go as adults and young children that the world and our experiences causes our breath to get shortened more and more and more, to the point where we're like half breathing into our throat or our chest instead of all the way down to our belly, which is where we breathe when we're laughing. It's where we breathe when we're crying. But it's during the day-to-day hecticness that we stay up higher in the shallow breaths. I think another strategy for teaching youth to deal with anxiety is normalizing help and really teaching that not asking for help is actually the weaker position to be in, and that it is normal for social beings to help other social beings. And if we can, this isn't necessarily, it could be a skill in the way that you request help. That's certainly a skill. But I'm really talking about teaching a mindset, and that is that help is human. So when the breath doesn't help, asking for help can also provide another outlet. And there's so many other specific strategies that my yogis and my meditation folks and my therapists have in their toolbox. But I'll name those two that I think are pretty universal.
Thank you. And also thank you for enlightening me, because I never took that into consideration of like when you watch a baby breathe, that like you really see like their stomachs move. And I'm like, wow, like that, like I've seen it like with my nephews or my nieces, like they don't breathe like that anymore. Right. No. When I was changing their diapers and everything, I'm like, they don't even breathe like that anymore. So that's, thank you for enlightening me on that, because I never took that into consideration. Okay, I have one more reveal your heel question. Many young people experience trauma. How can mentors be trained to recognize and respond to trauma in a way that promotes healing and resilience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, recognizing is the first step of being trauma informed in practice. What can youth mentors do to recognize trauma? Well, they can change the lenses by which they look at children, and not look at children by what they're doing or what they're saying, but what happened to them. And I think asking that question, what has been their experiences that have led them to say or do or X, Y, and Z? What has happened to them to bring forth this kind of behavior? And I think it's not just when the behavior on the outside is what we would label as negative, But I think in all ways, like what has happened? What has this child experienced? And I think embedding that into a practice is so key in terms of recognizing trauma. Now, responding to trauma, that is a really broad question. And I think there, in some cases, some psychological training that's needed to respond to some trainers. And so I would encourage mentors to recognize the limitations of their practice, and the limitations of their training. It's just the professional thing to do, and to recognize when certain traumas may require some professional help that is outside. And so you'll notice that throughout our conversation, because this is our first, maybe not last, hour, a lot of what I'm bringing, and I hope folks will take away is a set of values and a set of mind and mindsets that create and produce great practices. Because there are all kinds of lists of practices, but I really like to start from what's our values and where's our mindset. How do we approach our practice is an important first set of conversations that can then lead to, okay, well, these values and these mindsets show up in various numbers of practices.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So I know you spoke of corporate America and like being in corporate America and then getting in there and kind of like, I don't know if this is my thing. So I wanted to touch base on like education and workplace representation. And I wanted to ask you, what are some practical ways to mentor youth and young adults, navigating their first professional experiences?
So when I was in MBA school, we had to take a course called PD. That was just, when is your PD class? And I think that it stood for professional development. I think that would make good sense. I think that all children, all people should be supported in their transitions. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself and then dive into answering that question. If I could wave a magic wand on my profession, I would be a liminal scientist. And even today, I am bringing my own study to transition periods. And the reason I bring up transition periods is because they're such dangerous, they could be dangerous, also powerful points in time, because you're moving from one set of expectations to another set of expectations. And how you traverse and move from one to another is essential. And so you're asking me specifically about that transition from higher ed to corporate America, where the expectations are different. I think that we need to support youth in understanding the expectations of this new environment of corporate America or the nonprofit sector, just professional life, and really help them understand, well, how were you successful in college? And which of those ways are transition to the new environment? And which of them do not transition and will set you up for failure? And so you ask about practical ways of helping students prepare for their first career. I think every college environment, I think mentor programs that are supporting youth at that time in their life should be having these explicit conversations and recognizing, honoring, and celebrating you're transitioning. And so that means we need to like talk about some things and, really go through that exercise and more about really empowering folks to see like you have already what it takes to get to the next phase because you've gotten up to this point. But there's a little bit of a gap because things are different. And let's just talk about what those things are. And in some cases, it might be moving from an HBCU where you're amongst a lot of Black and brown folks, all Black and brown folks for the most part, and then moving into corporate America where you have now immediately become the one or the two. So that's just one example that I would offer. And I started off talking about PD because those can be PD classes that really help to train and provide concrete examples and guidance of how to navigate the new environment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So with that being said, right, how important are partnerships with organizations such as schools, social service, in effectively supporting youth? And what are some examples of successful collaborations that you may have seen in your career?
Yeah. Given that nonprofits and social service agencies are often running on very tight budgets, and therefore the financial resources, financial capital is often limited, partnerships are critical because that brings social and organizational capacities through partnership. I also think that, there's the old adage, and I just drew a blank on it. Oh my gosh, I just drew a blank on it, but it's like, go slow. If you want to do it by yourself, go slow. If you want to do it well and effective, do it together is the essence of the statement. And so I think partnerships are critical from that perspective as well, just in terms of how the resources that it takes to get it done can never be done by a single organization. But also the human experience is so complex that in order to move a people forward, it requires collaboration. Our organization thrives on partnerships. Each one of our local partnerships across the state are collaborating from the whole spectrum to pediatric offices, police departments, local DA, district attorney offices, schools, of course, libraries, chambers, county commissioners. We see the business of early childhood as everyone's business. Like every place where you exist in a particular county, there is some direct impact and contribution that can be made. So I think that for all those reasons, partnerships are critical. And really what we're talking about, Corbin, is engaging and supporting youth to break the status quo. And if we're really trying to change the environment where youth are, it's another reason why we need partnerships. So when you're working directly with a youth, of course you need partnerships because you rarely have enough money as a single organization. And that youth doesn't just exist in one context. So for both of those reasons, you need organizational resources through partnerships and just recognizing that when that youth leaves your environment, that they're going to go to another environment. And so having relationships in that way are both of those create the value of partnerships. At the same time, if we want to make systems change and create the environment by which youth are growing up, we absolutely need partnerships. So I really can't think of any reason. I mean, it's hard work. And for all the reasons, you have two different organizations that may have similar missions, but have their own priorities. And there's so many barriers, especially when that partnership is unfunded, which is a huge reality that I experience in the day to day. Like, no, there aren't very many funders that are funding just the collaboration. And so I say it's essential. I sign every email in partnership because I want folks to feel like we must and can do this together.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I want to talk more now about current events and, how they affect youth and youth mentoring. So my first question is, I kind of just kind of stated it, but I'll say it. How do current local, regional, national, and global events impact the youth you work with?
Well, again, the youth I work with are very young, and the current events from local to global, it can have a different kind of impact than if we're talking about older youth. And so I'll start with our state legislature's decision to reduce corporate taxes to zero, meaning that our state will be collecting zero corporate tax. Now, where will we get the money to do our job as a state? I mean, we just cut off our revenue source. So that is a local reality that will indirectly impact very young youth and youth of all ages, because now the state has fewer resources in order to meet the needs of the most vulnerable youth. Elections. The folks who are elected and not elected have a direct impact or indirect impact in that, what are their values? Are they funding and using the very precious few dollars that we do have as a state to really invest in prevention and intervention? And really prevention, because our state is good at funding interventions after the problem happens. But I think that who we vote locally, who we elect locally, has an indirect impact on our state's investment in prevention. And what we're talking about are prevention dollars, like reaching youth as young as possible, as early as possible, to address challenges and close opportunity gaps. I mean, I think because we're a global society now with TikTok and Instagram and things from all over the world, literally at the fingertips of, late early childhood and early middle school, I think that all of the access to information and different people's presentation of their life via social media, like all of that, definitely directly impacts youth, and it either builds them up or tears them down, make them feel good about themselves or make them question themselves. And I think we, without banning these things, must recognize the impact that they have on youth. And circling back to the beginning, elect folks that are going to prioritize these conversations around prevention and ensure that our state and our local environment is doing what it can to support youth.
Thank you. Well, we touched on funding, so I'll leave that one. The future of mentoring. So I have two questions centered around that. What do you see as the future of youth and young adult mentoring, and how can organizations evolve to better meet the needs of young people?
It's similar. My response is similar to what I would say about early childhood educators. We have to recognize it as a profession. We have to professionalize the field of mentoring. It is not babysitting, just as early childhood educators are not babysitters. It is passion work. It is care work. It is human service work that we must invest in the same way that we invest in our teachers. And so the future of mentoring, I think, unfortunately, because of the youth behavioral crisis and all of the things that youth have experienced post-pandemic, there's been a lot more attention. Similar to early childhood, there's been a lot of attention on early childhood experiences and childcare. And I think that both fields, which are continuums of each other, early childhood experiences and mentoring, they're a continuum of a profession that provides nurturing and support for children. So I think that we have to galvanize this time and help people to understand that there is intentionality in the practice of mentoring and how beneficial it can be to young children and how essential it is to be an opportunity for nurturing relationships alongside the school building. I worked for a couple years in the museum world, and I am such a big fan of informal learning, just meaning outside of the K-12 pre-K system, just as much as I am a fan of and champion of formal schooling. And I think we need both. And as much as the education conversations are happening about funding education, I think the mentoring world, the world of informal education, of, informal relationships with children, like this is our time. We have to galvanize and leverage this moment so that the future of mentoring can be better than it has been. More funded is what I mean by better, more funded and more respected.
Okay. Well, I want to close with a powerful question I like to ask everybody. What is one concrete action listeners can take today to support youth mentoring in their communities?
Talk to people about what it is and why it's valuable. Everything starts with mindsets and values. And if the people in their communities have a misunderstanding of or a misappropriation of the value of mentoring, then they won't be willing to sign up for it for themselves. They won't be willing to vote for elected officials that would fund it. They won't demand it more in their community. And so I think the listeners, and thank you for those that have been with us this time, almost an hour. Appreciate your time listening. I would say find 10 people to talk to about youth mentoring. Educate them. Get them excited about the idea of it. Because when we shift that mindset, everything else will flow like a waterfall from there.
Your mouth to God's ears. Would you like to reintroduce yourself, your position, your title, and if so,
absolutely.
Outreach, how people could get in contact with you?
Absolutely. And I realized, we didn't say. I am Sophia Jackson. I engaged in this podcast with my hat on as Chief Strategy Officer of North Carolina Partnership for Children and the Smart Start Network. That is my daytime job and the role that I had in this podcast. Outside of that role, I am on the ballot in November for North Carolina House, District 37 in Southern Wake County. And you can reach out to me for Smart Start related work by contacting me at sjackson@smartstart.org, or for campaign related conversations and interactions, you can reach out to me at team@teamjackson4nc.com, FORNC.com.
We want to hear from you. If you are interested in being on the YMC and Me podcast, visit our website and email us at info@youthmentoringcollaborative.org.
Whoa, be yourself, king. Be yourself. Be yourself, queen. Be yourself. Be yourself, king. Be yourself. Be yourself, queen. Be yourself.